Hey team, Jen here. I am coming to you dead center in the middle of your course at week 5. As you know, week 5 is an extremely important week because it is a kind of a transitional period for students where they can stop and reflect on their performance, where they are versus where they want to be. So I'm going to be coming at you this week with a couple topics that should be helpful as you move forward. The first thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to offer you some tips for helping students to perform better after the midterm. The second thing I'd like to cover today is how you can adjust your grading techniques to help students develop sharper awareness of their rhetorical strategies and their sensibilities of what it means to write academic essays or to perform, with a group in the wikis, etc. The third thing I want to address is how to better use the Turnitin platform, um, and also how to check for plagiarism through the Turnitin platform. And finally, I want to discuss something very major, and that is the politics of grade inflation. So, a couple of things on the agenda for today. I want to get started right away. Some tips for helping students to perform better after the midterm. The midterm gives us a really great opportunity to prompt students to start doing the kind of reflection that you want them essentially to be doing every single week. But week 5 is special because it has that the chime of the midterm. Here at the midterm, I often engage my students in a process of reflection in which I ask them to look back to the first week of class and to think about the goals that they set for themselves during that first week, the expectations that they had for themselves, and how they understood my expectations and how they understood the content of the course, how they understood what it means to be an MA student, all of those things. So here in week 5, I like to give pause and ask for students to start doing some of that reflective work where they look back in order to look forward. Sometimes I'll create an additional forum just for this purpose, where I will ask students to set some new goals, some fresh goals, to help them to bring awareness to their performance as they carry forth with the second half of the class. By week 5, students tend to get a sense of their general performance finally, and they either feel really elated or they're feeling some anxiety. Or perhaps they're even feeling apathetic in some cases, hopefully not. But they tend to have a strong emotional register in week 5. They feel the weight that they're at the midway point, and that change needs to happen from here on out if they're going to reach their goal. So you want to capitalize on that in week 5. I really like to have them do a reflective piece. That's optional. I think that's really helpful. But there are certainly other tips that we could take away from ways to help students perform better in week 5. Last week I talked about the importance of outreach, and hopefully you've been doing that in your courses. I see that some of you have. And I'd like to hear from you in the forums this week about additional tips, things that you do to help your students to feel more successful, to be more optimistic, to be more critical, to be tougher on themselves in the second half. That's important, isn't it? Especially for an MA student. The next thing I want to cover today is how you can adjust your grading techniques to foster more independence in student thinking. One thing that I value so much is that I constantly evolve my grading approach throughout the term, every term. And I let students know that I'm doing this, and I let them know why I'm doing it. And I want to let you know why I do it and why I think it's important. And I want to encourage you to think about whether or not you feel that evolving your grading techniques through the semester matches your pedagogy. In the beginning of the term, I let students know that they will see my grading techniques change through the term to match my expectations of them. One thing that a lot of MA students in English aspire to is to become professors themselves. So I like to help train them for that by showing them through my commenting style that I want them to do more work as they go forth in the course, while I do less work. That sounds really good, doesn't it? But there's a function to it, and there's a purpose to this. So I tell them in the first 2 weeks of the course, the kind of comments that they'll be receiving on their deliverables is extremely, almost painfully in depth. They have voice comments, they have marginal comments. I mark every little tiny thing that I notice, whether it's related to writing mechanics, composition techniques, what I call the line of inquiry, idea development, argumentation, every formatting, every little tiny nugget, they will get comment on. It will almost give them a headache. I prepare them for this and I say, you want to print out your Turnitin report. You want to take a look at it thoroughly. You want to follow up with me immediately. So I let them know all of these things. The same with discussion board posts, the same with workshops. There's a lot of in-depth work going on. They get voice comments, they get marginal comments, they get rubric comments. It's very in-depth. In week 3 and 4 and 5, they will start to see that I will expect that by week 3, 4, and certainly by week 5, that they will be able to grasp what I mean by more shorthanded comments. So for example, in weeks 1 and 2, let's say students are not having, let's say a particular student is not having very strong idea development in her essays. And I kind of have gone into detail about this, offering her suggestions, offering her examples, offering perhaps useful links where she can see what a paragraph should do, how it should function, how it should represent a fully developed idea from beginning to end. By week 3, by week 4, certainly by week 5, I am not going to do that anymore. I expect that she is going to know what I mean when I simply say, your paragraph development is extremely poor. By this point in the term, I need to see that you are changing your approach here to how you could think about paragraphs. That's all that it takes, right? By the time we get to week 10, right, there's very minimal. I expect her to know when I say, you're continuing to struggle with paragraph development, you're continuing to struggle with A, B, and C, in addition to what you've done well, but she'll be able to see and understand exactly what I mean by that point. So through my comments, I let students know this is a way of teaching you. And it's not encouraging you to be lazy. It's encouraging you rather to continue to develop a rhetorical sensibility of why you're making the choices that you're making. So in my comments in the early weeks, I tell them, in your next deliverable, I'm going to be looking explicitly for paragraph development improvement. If I don't see that by week 4, I'm going to back off. You can follow up with me through office hours. You can follow up with me by watching my writing overview videos on my YouTube channel. You can get a lot of help by going to these resources. But by week 4 or week 5, if I see that your paragraphs are still doing the same thing, I'm backing off. I'm backing off of that, right? You want to give students, you want to make them take responsibility for the choices that they're making. One of the best way to do that is through your evaluation of their work. So I let them know you're going to see a strong evolution. By the end of the term, I rely a lot more heavily on voice comments because I like them to hear the excitement in my voice. I like to just be quick with a 3-minute comment about what they've done well and what needs improvement. And I expect them to be able to understand the language that I'm using and what exactly that means by week 10. If they don't, and I constantly check in with them, but if they don't, it has to be on them. You have to make sure that you're providing enough resources for them so that you can do that. I think that's so important, especially here at week 5, where you want to start to make a transition once you've done that kind of foundational work to move students toward taking more on their own shoulders. I think that is a very important thing for them to do as master's students. The next thing I want to talk about is Turnitin. Eventually, SNHU will be transitioning away from Turnitin, but for now, we're still using it and it needs to be used well. It needs to be used meticulously and expertly. Our students rely on us to give them feedback that is very detailed on their essays in particular because they're English students. Essay writing is very important. What I do in Turnitin is I design my own comments and I save them to the bank so that I can use them again and again and again. Through the years, I've made very similar comments on student papers. Turnitin allows me to design my own little blue bubbles that I can be as detailed as I want. I can include links. I can include so much information. Exactly what do I think an argument is, right? And I can put that on students' papers. It offers them so much more detail than the constructed ones that are already in the platform. But either way, in Turnitin, you want to make sure that you are commenting first and foremost on their ideas. That is so key. I see some instructors using Turnitin and almost 100% using it as a way to comment on sentence fragment and agreement issues. That definitely has a role, it has a function in evaluation. But what's most important for our graduate students is absolutely giving them hardcore detailed feedback about their ideas. What could they do to make their line of inquiry stronger, more controversial, more ethos related? What can they do to meet your expectations even more? That's what they need to know because they want to do well in your course. So if not having a fragment in paragraph 4 is going to bring their grade from a 75 to a 93, that's problematic, right? So you want to give the kind of comments that are really going to help students to see, to visualize exactly what you want from them. Turnitin helps you to do that. You can interact with the essay directly on the paper. I like to do marginal inline comments. And I also do an end comment, a blurb, where I give them a kind of general sense of how they performed. I follow that by a numerical breakdown of the rubric, and I also give them a quick voice comment, not all the time, but sometimes, especially after the 5-week mark, where I quickly go through the top 2 strengths and the 1 or the 2 things I want to see them improve in the next essay. So you want to think about utilizing that Turnitin platform hardcore. The final thing I can say to you about Turnitin is that not all students will feel like they need to look at your Turnitin comments. Now you can tell whether or not a student has looked at the report by going back into the module where Turnitin was, clicking on it again, and if they viewed it, there'll be a check mark. Early in my career, I saw that like one student was doing it, and I was like, this is ridiculous. So now I say to students, you must read my Turnitin comments. I must see that you have. If you haven't, I will come after you, right? You must read those comments. Why wouldn't you want to read them? If you're not reading the comments that I'm leaving for you, then that makes me think that you don't want to change your way of writing, and that makes me very alarmed because you're a master's student. You should want to always become a stronger student and continue to develop your rhetorical sensitivity. So if I see that a student hasn't read my comments after I send out the email that they've been posted, I am on their butt quickly. And I also let them know that I will not read their next essay until they have looked at the comment. So as the deadline's approaching for the grade on their next essay, I will shoot them an email and say, hey, you haven't read my comments. It's been 2 weeks. I don't know what you want me to do with this most recent essay that you submitted, right? What am I supposed to think of that? You submitted the essay without having to read the comments that I left for you. You need to get in touch with me. You need to let me know what's going on. Of course, I have to grade it. That's just a threat. It's an empty threat, but it works. And so I would try. The final thing that I want to talk about is grade inflation. Grade inflation is a huge problem, not just at SNHU, but everywhere in all first world countries. I think that grade inflation, especially with our master students, is happening across the board in almost every shell. It's very problematic for me when I go into your grade book and I see that most students, if not all of them, have perfect grades. To get a perfect grade, according to the rubrics that we have in this program, the work has to be exceptional. Now, what exceptional means can vary depending on instructor, even with the rubric language. For me, what it means is that there's a nugget of this writing that could make it publishable. Publishable means it's exceptional, something that's never been offered before, something that drives our profession forward. If a student writing doesn't have that kind of quality idea, it's not exceptional, it's proficient. So I tell students that from day one. My expectation is to get them to be a published author. If they want to be a professor, they're going to have to do it. I don't want to stroke their ego by giving them a high grade. It's doing them a disgusting disservice, right? In a lot of ways. And to use that strong language is harsh, but I think that it's really, really true. I mean, take a look at the situation that you're in right now as an adjunct instructor and that I'm in as an adjunct instructor. There are so many PhDs out there right now that schools are paying instructors a lot less money. There are strikes going on across the nation, right? Because they can do whatever they want. They can treat adjuncts however they like to because there's so many PhDs. PhDs are being handed out way more than they ought to be because in relation to the jobs available, there just aren't enough jobs for all of the people who are qualified to do those jobs. We have to start raising our standards, I think, of what it means to obtain an MA, what kind of skills and qualities you should have to have an MA. That starts with the instructors. It's hard, it's harsh, and it's questionable, and it's problematic in a lot of ways. Because what are we saying? Are we saying that we should close our doors to certain types of students? It depends on your pedagogy. As an instructor in the discourse of evaluation, it's very important that you are very clear about what is exceptional work and that you only give exceptional scores for exceptional work. I always try to think of it this way. Where do I want this profession to go? Why do I think it is important that we are cranking out MAs with particular skills versus skill sets versus other skill sets? What are the stakes of that? When you think about grade inflation, think about the future of the humanities, right? Think about where the digital humanities are taking us. Think about where online teaching is taking us. Think about the stakes of what we do. Why is it important? Why would we want to churn out 50 MAs in your class versus 2? Think about those politics. Why don't we just meet in the forums and have a conversation about it there? There's so much to unpack. But at the end of the day, I want to see you being critical with your students. And if you're giving them an 85 to an MA student, that's insulting. Good. Maybe they'll make some changes. Maybe not. So let's talk about it. I hope to see you in the forums this week. That's all I've got for you, but it certainly is enough. Have a great week, guys, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.